Welcome to HebrewSchoolFun.com. I've met many of you before at other webinars, and today's topic is how do we address Kristallnacht and actually anti-Semitism with children? At what age do we start talking about it? Do we have to wait till they're a little older? And we just figured the timing is good because Kristallnacht is very soon, and it's the perfect time to talk about it. I know most of us don't really deal with anti-Semitism that often, and we're dealing with all these fun things. We name our company HebrewSchoolFun.com, but you know something? There are times we do have to address it, and we're going to address it today. Most of us don't really deal with anti-Semitism, or a horrific thing like the Holocaust. But there are times that you do actually encounter anti-Semitism, and you do have to know what to do about it. I have to just tell you a quick story before we go into this, and you'll meet my panelists. When I was a principal back in 1990 or 89, somewhere around there, one beautiful sunny morning on a Sunday, we all go to the temple for Hebrew school. And there we are, everyone's getting out of their cars, there's 100 and some odd kids and their parents and the rabbi, and we're all going, and as we look up at the temple, it is covered with swastikas. Black paint was all over the building, the paths walking up, the windows, everything. We are standing now on the lawn and just staring. When something like that happens, you really just don't know what to do. Okay, the rabbi is next to me. The rabbi wasn't part of the Holocaust, but his family escaped before it got so bad. And he's talked about it. He used to tell us about, he remembered running. He was like 10 years old, and his parents just yelled, "Run." And a 10-year-old, he was concerned he left his cat back in the house. And he kept thinking, what's going to happen to my cat? Is anyone going to feed the cat? Who's going to take care of it? Because a 10-year-old doesn't think that far. And all he remembered was running and crying because he was leaving his cat. So now he's standing with the key to the temple. I'm standing with the key. My reaction, I just stood back, terrified, like I don't know who's in there. The rabbi ran ahead, opened the door of the temple, and said, "We're going in. Nobody can be afraid." Well, we were afraid. And now we're in there. How do you deal with this? We got through the morning. We got through it pretty well. When I got home, I actually called up one of my panelists here today, Dr. Bernard Jacobs, because he's a psychiatrist. And I said, here's what happened this morning. How do we deal with this? Because we really don't want to harm any of the children. I know children can't see the fear in the adults who are protecting them, but the adults were terrified. How do you deal with this? So today, I'm just lucky enough to have these three wonderful panelists. Let me introduce them. Dr. Bernard Jacobs, who helped me survive that time, is here with us, and he is a psychiatrist, and he's going to be approaching this topic from a psychiatric perspective. Next, I'm going to introduce Rabbi Sarah Freidson, a graduate of Brandeis and Jewish Theological Seminary, happens to be a wonderful rabbi, and she's going to approach the topic from a rabbinical perspective. And finally, we have Marilyn Arsham, which many of you may have met at New Cage. Marilyn, for those who don't know, is a graduate of Yeshiva, and she actually was a biochemist for years, but she also has been for over 20 years a Hebrew school teacher. And so she's going to approach the topic from an educational point of view. So let's begin. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready. Rabbi, I'm going to begin with you.
Okay.
Okay. The first question, and this incorporates a lot of questions other people have sent in. Can we use Kristallnacht as a chance to open discussion with our children about anti-Semitism? And who to report it to, if it happens to a child, and how to react when affronted with it? Or would it create too much fear in children? Yeah, that's
multi-part question.
Okay, sorry.
In terms of the fear in children, I you'll need to teach age-appropriate levels, and I know Dr. Jacobs is going to be talking more about that, which is his expertise. But if you are teaching the right material for the right age group, it shouldn't create too much fear. Kristallnacht can certainly be a jumping off point. It depends on the purpose of your lesson. Are we trying to teach the students a history lesson or teach them about the Holocaust? In which case, teach Kristallnacht about the historical event. What happened? What are the facts? And perhaps as part of the lesson towards the end, you can talk about modern anti-Semitism. What are things that today has in common with Kristallnacht and how children can handle it? On the other hand, if it's, for instance, a Kristallnacht commemoration or some sort of program about Kristallnacht, it's certainly appropriate to use that as a jumping off point to talk about anti-Semitism today. I think we want to give children the tools to report and to know what to look for, but not, don't make it too much for them. Don't frighten them with it, but make sure they know who they can talk to and what the resources are.
Thank you. Either one want to say anything?
Can I say something? You can
Yes.
I just have a, when you say the Kristallnacht, associating it with today, I worry about that.
Okay.
It will, Kristallnacht was pretty dramatic, and it was in the middle of something very important, so I don't know if I would make them think
so they need to learn the facts
today.
Right, they need to learn the facts, and what made Kristallnacht unique, and which is not happening today, is that it was government sponsored. And what we're seeing now is acts of anti-Semitism that are not government sponsored, that are not a policy meant to attack the Jewish community. However, anti-Semitism is that like a virus, right? It just mutates and shows up here and there. And so certainly you can give them tools to represent or to recognize, what are those tropes that keep showing up. Yeah.
I would just emphasize the importance of considering where a child is developmentally. For young children, they're not going to be able to learn about Kristallnacht. What's more likely to happen is they'll just get frightened, and it could be somewhat traumatic to them to hear these stories. Older kids, 7th grade and older, they could handle it.
Thank you. Dr. Jacobs, on second question that many people sent in, after the shooting in Pittsburgh, many children and adults were scared that it could happen in their temple, and it can. So what do we tell the children? What do we tell the adults? Because they're the ones that are so anxious over this, and the children.
Well, to take the children first. And again, it's a matter of their age. If it's a young child, tell them that measures have been taken, are being taken to make the synagogue safe. But I think the important thing is not just answering a question. It's considering why the child is asking the question in the first place. The child is feeling scared, and so the important thing is to do what one can to alleviate the fear. And so what the adult needs to consider is what his or her own feelings are. And we have to be careful to first have our own emotions under control before addressing very difficult questions like that, because if we say words that sound reassuring, but we don't look like, or the child doesn't experience us as reassured, it's not going to be reassuring. So whether it's parents or teachers, we have to first check in with our own emotions, and as far as what to say to adults, I think it would be the same thing, pay attention to your emotions and get them under control before trying to talk to the children.
Everybody's with that. Marilyn, I'm going to go to a question that someone said, I'm not sure I'm the right one to talk, which is interesting, to my students about the Holocaust because I get so upset. As a teacher, it's upsetting. I mean, that day, what happened to me, it was scary. Okay, so you're trying, how do you do this? Because it is hard to talk about.
It is very hard, and again, it's the age of the child. If I don't feel comfortable, I wouldn't try to do that. I wouldn't try to talk to the child because they're going to pick up the fear. No matter what you say, they're going to pick up that anxiety within you, and they're going to absorb it. Whatever it is, it's something. So what you might want to say, or what I would say, is that I think this is a very good thing that you brought up, and I think we should really maybe talk to the rabbi, maybe or educational director or whoever would be in that position, but because this is a really great thing to be talking about.
I'm going to ask all three of you then, what age do you think they should start talking about it? And if they do ask you or something happens and they're at a younger age, what do you actually say? Because I know we're all saying talk to the child, but don't start to them. But what do we say to them?
Linda, I just want to pick up on something Marilyn was saying on it. Because I think teachers they're on the front lines of our children's lives.
Right.
And it's teachers who often, more than parents, might be presented with difficult questions. And for Jewish kids concerned about anti-Semitism, it's most likely to be their teachers in Hebrew school. And the teacher may really not know what to say. And I think a teacher who finds herself or himself in that position should understand that they're in good company. And you don't have to have an answer. It's okay to say to a child, I really want to give that question some thought. And I think when we do that, we're teaching kids thoughtfulness and patience. We're really modeling behavior that's very useful to them, because it would be nice to have a sort of a recipe type of way of responding to these difficult questions, 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's not the case. So I think teachers need to be kind to themselves, not to expect they're always going to have the answers, and realize that there's time. There's no rush to have to answer a question.
I'm going to mention it later also, but the PJ Library, if anyone's listening, go onto the PJ Library. There's a lot of books on this to read to young children, and they're good. These are really good books. So I think teachers have to know, because you're right, the teachers in the front line, actually even self-esteem in children, which I'm going off a bit, self-esteem is basically a perception, okay, how you think that significant other views you. In a child's life, it's number one, mom, dad, some family members, and then the teachers. So the teachers have so much power, okay, and this is a pretty tough question that they're asking us, and it's scary. And the teachers, we really have to be equipped. We have to know what we're doing. And just like you said, if we don't know, say we're human, we really don't know. But I'd recommend, I'm going to mention this at the end again, go to PJ Library and start reading some of those books and decide, and have a teacher's meeting, over you meet and decide who's going to read what, who's going to, in first grade will read this one, maybe in second this. But let me just throw out again, which actual age, because I've been hearing 12, 7th grade is when you really can approach this.
Although I think you can give younger children the tools to be recognizing unkind speech and kind speech, what's okay to say and what's not okay. You can start laying that groundwork much earlier for, feeling safe and what to do if there's a situation where they don't feel safe. Those are, and use language that they understand to talk about, complex issues, but they know right from wrong. They know, if you see something wrong and somebody says, and your teacher doesn't notice, it's okay to bring it to their attention, and start giving them some of those tools at a younger age. You're not talking about anti-Semitism, but you're laying the groundwork so that they'll be ready to be able to advocate for themselves or to learn about difficult topics and have that foundation already in place.
Good, thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
going to another question which was interesting here. I'm going to throw it out to all three of you. One of my 7th graders asked, why have we been persecuted for thousands of years? I mean, we all sit at dinner parties,
Right.
we all sit, Jews sit forever sitting and saying, what did we do?
Yeah.
Why
It's
do
an
people...
adult
It's an
question.
adult
That's
It is, it
everybody's
is.
question.
This is the 7th grade kid, so they're thinking about it.
Right.
How would you answer that?
I think before you answer the question, I would ask, what do you mean? And just try to find out what kind of answer they're looking for. Did something in particular happen? Have they learned about something in particular? Just so you have a sense of where that child's coming from. Because you can talk to a 7th grader about anti-Semitism, certainly, but again, at their level, that's not going to be quite as nuanced of an answer as you're going to give to a 15-year-old, for example. So I would first say, what do you mean? And then it's an opportunity to talk about scapegoating and minorities and bias. There's some opportunities there, but you don't want to answer the wrong question.
Okay, Marilyn.
I
go
wanted
ahead.
to say something about the age because I've taught in the 5th grade. I taught Kristallnacht from the 10,000 Children book, the Behrman House book, and just 1 or 2 stories, just to bring that time in. But and I've also taught 7th grade the Holocaust. I think it's a very difficult subject, and I personally would prefer it being taught in 7th grade. And in 5th grade, we can put that burden on it, but I'd much rather talk more. Right now, I'd really like to talk about the cop that is standing at our front door with a gun. I mean, they're seeing that coming in. He's opening the door for them, and it's, or in the car that's always there. This is a discussion we really need to talk about,
That is, Bernie. go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think about times parents would say to me when I was working with parents and kids, and they'd say, I want to empower my child. I want them to know what's going on. This is a tough world. I want them to be prepared. There's time to prepare them. There's real benefits developmentally for a child to have less anxiety in their earlier developmental years. You're not aiming for freedom from anxiety. Nobody gets that, and parents who try to create that for their kids really are not doing them a service. On the other hand, I found that sometimes parents don't really think developmentally, and they're talking to their children as though the children had adult minds. They don't. There's just no need for a 5th grader to be learning about the Holocaust. That's not really part of their Jewish identity. We want to instill in them what it means to be a Jew, participating in Hebrew school, going to synagogue, going to summer camp. That's how I think we empower them as Jewish children. But 5th grade, you're just going to scare them. By the 7th grade, yeah, it becomes important that children start learning about our people's history, and unfortunately, that's a part of it.
Yeah, and I would emphasize, especially in 7th grade and in middle school, you're going to start seeing some of that bullying, and unfortunately, some of the bullying does take place around Jewish identity, around anti-Semitic beliefs. I think arming children with the facts is really important, but again, what's behind their question? You don't want to give them too much information. You want to answer the question and give them tools, and you want to give them facts. So if they're saying, I learned X, Y, or Z, or someone said, Jewish people are, this, it's okay to say, well, this is where that belief came from, and this is why it's not true.
Yeah, I want to go back to when our temple was desecrated, and I actually called you. You may not remember, but you said to me, which helped. It helped these kids. You said, go into each class and tell the children, we're not in Germany. We're not in the middle of a war. We live here, right here. The police are our friends. They're right here. They're going to help us. And actually, in our community, I don't know if you remember, the police, the community came out, all the churches, the fire department, and helped get the paint off. I mean, it was an amazing thing for all the kids to see. But you said, make it clear, this is reality. You're not in the middle of a war. No one's going to do anything to you. And you have people here to protect you. And I think that was just wonderful.
And I think it's important also to tell the good ending, right? So the story doesn't end, the building was desecrated. The story ends, and the community came together to help us fix it.
Yeah. You have a wonderful story, Rabbi, that you've told.
Thank you.
So tell that story.
A friend of mine's grandmother lived in Germany during Kristallnacht. The grandmother, Eva, was 10 years old, and the family lived in an apartment, and Kristallnacht was happening outside. They were very frightened. The neighbor across the hall wasn't a Nazi. He was a part of the Nazi party, knocked on their door and said, come and hide in my apartment. I do not believe that, women or children, this is not supposed to be against women and children, hid the family in his apartment. Sure enough, the authorities came to their apartment, knocked on the door, came into the apartment, no one was there. They were safely hidden across the hall, and the family was able to leave Germany. And keep in mind, the person who did this was part of the Nazi party and had morals, so I think we don't, and Kristallnacht went against those standards of it's okay to do and save their lives. So when we talk about Kristallnacht, we can give, or any tragic event, we talk about the details, we give them historical facts, here's what happened, and we can tell some of these experiences and because somebody spoke out, because someone took a risk, because someone said this is wrong and made an action, this family was okay and they were able to leave Germany. My friend was born, and she's named actually after her grandmother. So, and then we can take it from not only there are people who will help you, but you are a person who can help others. And that, I think, is a very important part of Judaism. We look at our history. We were strangers in a strange land. We know what it is to be oppressed, and therefore we do not oppress. Therefore we care for the marginalized. And that's what we can do with our history. Not, this is such a tragic history, but we've had a painful history, and we know what it is to have resilience. We know what it is to come back. We know what it is to watch out for the underdog. We know what it is to be true to our values. And that's what we want to instill in our children as a Jewish identity. That's what it means to be Jewish, not to be persecuted.
And I wanted to say, this is amazing, and I would hope that a lot of the educational directors do this with their teachers and the rabbi, and get together and get their own home stories together.
Should we include the parents? Shouldn't we get the parents and grandparents?
Absolutely.
And the grandparents.
And all the stories that you can find just among your own people. This can be very comforting, especially if kids are getting anxious about what's going on with all the violence in the schools and now with the synagogues. I wanted to say one more thing. I taught during 9/11. Okay, I was a teacher then as well in Hebrew school. And we always collected tzedakah. What I did is I had them divide into three. That they would nominate tzedakah places. And we always raised maybe $75 at the end of the year, and that was good, After 9/11, it was $500, $600.
Wow.
And I didn't even know what to do with them. I mean, we gave it to the Red Cross, but the kids were so involved. But then I wonder, now they're adults. They're my son's age. So I wonder how that affected them. There was a pride because they were American and we were all together. It wasn't the brokenness that came out of the Holocaust, but there's a lot of pride in being Jewish too.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the things, I could be wrong, that keeps us together, almost as a family. When someone is on TV and they do something bad, every Jew goes, oh gosh.
I know.
They do something good, every Jew goes, oh, I'm so happy. But I think that's maybe this background we all have.
It's the background.
Is what keeps us all together.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything in closing? I'm going to go one to the other that you want to make known, that you want to share with everyone.
I think it's important that we arm our teenagers with knowledge. What are the anti-Semitic stereotypes? What's the truth? How did they develop? What are ways they can counter it? And we don't have to do that on our own. I mean, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, has great curriculum. The Holocaust Museum has great curriculum. So and resources for educators. You don't have to do it, on your own. But to arm, especially our teenagers, with that information, teach them about identifying allies and about being an ally and creating relationships. And we do this as an adult. I mean, I think it's important that the teachers and the leadership of a school or of a congregation is thinking similarly. Who are allies? How can we nurture those relationships? How can we make sure we know what the facts are and how we can explore that bias? And there's a sense of making sure our allies have that information as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also find sometimes kids come to me with things from the regular school where they've had something anti-Semitic coming. Not as much in the younger ages, but I've seen it at 5th grade, and I've seen it in 4th grade when my son was in school. So I think it's good that teachers understand what's going on with their kids in their school. I mean, if they come to them, it might not be something that you can actually approach, but it's something that you do want to make sure that the educational director and the rabbi knows, and that maybe something can be done with the school or with the family or whatever it is, so that the child knows they have someone to go to.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I think I'll close just picking up on what I was saying earlier. Teachers have two missions in their work with the children. One is the didactic mission, and the other is the relationship they have with the child. When it comes to the didactics, by all means, strive for excellence. When it comes to the relationship, you don't have to be excellent. In the 60s, a wonderful, really brilliant child psychoanalyst, D.W. Winnicott, coined the phrase the good enough parent. And that has really been carried through down the decades. And it applies, I think, to any adult-child relationship. Children don't need perfection from us. It's okay if sometimes we're sort of muddling through. We're really not sure what to do.
We are.
All the children need to know is that we love them, we care about them, and in the end, a child's sense of security is going to come much more from relationships like that than from the necessary presence of police cars and so on. We're the ones who really give them that sense of security.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's true.
thank you.
Very true.
And there is one more thing that we didn't talk about. One thing that drives me absolutely crazy is when folks are making gratuitous references to the Holocaust. So something bad, something anti-Semitic, it does not necessarily equal genocide, state-sponsored genocide. And so I think it's very important that we're careful about our language. The Holocaust was absolutely unique, and anti-Semitism and violence against minorities has taken place. We can talk about it being wrong. We can talk about it being a concern. We can talk about bias and negative stereotypes without comparing things directly to the Holocaust. hate speech doesn't equal state-sponsored genocide. It's kind of like what we were talking about before. You know, the anti-Semitism today is not Kristallnacht. And that distinction is important for us to remember, and it's important to remember in our teaching and the way we talk to the children.
Okay, I have to say, I'm sorry, but anti-Semitism in certain areas that have Ku Klux Klan is a little bit more connected to that kind of ideology. So yes, here in New York, but I know I wouldn't be so dismissive about.
I'm not
okay,
dismissing
no,
it,
not dismissive, but
no, I think we have to watch out, and this is much more for our older teens and for the adults.
Right.
We need to be very careful about looking for white supremacist ideology and not electing those people and calling it out and ensuring that there's intolerance against it. Doesn't mean, the Holocaust could never happen again.
But
a
That's what I
swastika in a
wanted to share.
textbook is not Kristallnacht. It's not. And let's not make those false comparisons, because it cheapens, I think, what happened in this extremely unique situation. And genocide and ethnic cleansing does happen, and thank God it hasn't happened to the Jewish people. And part of what we do is we say never again for all people. And I think that's really important. I think that's really important to make sure the children know.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that emotions can reconfigure our sense of reality. Images of Kristallnacht, Nazis and the Holocaust and so on. Those images are so disturbing. They evoke such strong emotions that those emotions can have us seeing things that are going on now as though it's the same. That's what you're saying, Rabbi.
Right.
And it really isn't. We have to stop, calm down, and try to be introspective and see our emotions and see the role they're playing in distorting our thinking.
You know, I want to jump in. It's very interesting. I did this from a rabbi's point of view, teachers and psychiatrists. Bernie and I, we were both brought up in New York. You're Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Marilyn, you grew up in South Carolina with the Ku Klux Klan living next door.
Yes.
So I think that's really interesting what you just said, how we're all viewing this. Okay, because you've
right. That's where I
experienced.
say, when you say the Holocaust, before you said the Holocaust, it's not the same, that's a unique thing. I don't see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I see gangs, and I see, I have fear about it because I grew up with it,
Yeah.
and it was not in the minority. So, and it was very acceptable. So, but that's, again, I'm old. It was a different generation totally, but it's something I do have a fear.
It's interesting though, because of the
Our
child in
aware-
us,
right.
we're all viewing. and
Well, I was spit in
perceiving
the
this.
face when I was 5 and called a dirty Jew, so
Wow.
So
still
it's
remember
never
that
gonna
smell.
Go away. It's never going to
Yeah.
go away.
Right.
Wow. Okay. At this point, I'd like to say thank you to this wonderful panel. You've given us a wealth of information and a lot to think about. I think we've learned that children are not capable of dealing with these issues till they're about 12 or 13. But you still can go to them and talk about it a little bit if you want to introduce something, but do it through books, through other resources, and they're all online. And especially, I'm going to say the PJ Library has a multitude of books on this for very young ages. Because if you're not ready and you're not sure what to do, just say to the child, if they just suddenly come to you and give you a question in this 7 or 8, just say, it's a really good question, and I have to think about it. But I promise you, I will answer your question. And that's about it. I thank you all so much for being with us.